Wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about the code of ethics. Hopefully this isn't something you have to think about on a regular basis because your natural way of doing things is in line with the code of ethics, but I think it's important to know where to find the detailed code of ethics if you do need to reference it, and then talk about the code of ethics, essentially the violation, or what's called the professional standards process. First off, the code of ethics is on the NAR website. Generally Googling it will get you there relatively easy. So there's a number of different articles broken up into a couple different sections. Our obligations to the public, our obligations to other realtor members, as well as some other sections. You want to take a look at it, have a general familiarity with it. A lot of times people don't tend to look in depth in it until they either volunteer with the local association realtors and they're on the panel that hears the complaints, or someone that has a complaint or a complaint made against them, and you're like, oh man, I need to read up on this and make sure, am I actually out of line? Is the other person out of line? How does this really make sense with the code of ethics? So I encourage everyone to look at it. It takes a little while to read it, but nonetheless, there can be some surprises if you haven't looked at it in detail. With that, I want to talk about the professional standards process. So if someone does have a complaint because you think someone has violated code of ethics or someone else thinks you have violated the code of ethics, I want to talk about this process mostly because I hope you will never find yourself in this process because it stinks. If you have the chance to take the high road and de-escalate a situation, please seize the opportunity to de-escalate it, because this process is time-consuming, distracting, usually mentally for agents that are going through this process. It just takes away from other more productive, more enjoyable endeavors. So if you have a chance to avoid everything I'm about to tell you, please do. The process with the code of ethics or professional standards or ethics complaints essentially follows a few parts. So the first part is someone has to make a written complaint to a local association of realtors. Can't make it to NAR, you can't make it to CAR. All complaints are handled at local association of realtors. They all have a complaint intake form, and someone has to fill out that complaint. And the public can do that, an agent can file it, but of course it's a complaint against a realtor member. Once that complaint is filed, the next step is it will go to a grievance committee. So these are not the people that hear the arguments of both sides. They will just look at that complaint. They will review which articles the person making the complaint, called the complainant. It's just the complainant who makes the complaint and the respondent who is the complaint is about, so the person who has to defend themselves. So those terms you'll hear a lot. The complainant in their complaint has to check the box for which articles, like which paragraphs in the code of ethics they're saying this person has violated. Then goes to this grievance committee. The grievance committee will look at the details of the situation that have been submitted, as well as which articles they think have been violated, and they'll say yes or no, we think this merits being heard by the professional standards committee, and actually having a hearing where both sides will make their arguments, and then the committee will have to make a decision about if they're in violation or not. The grievance committee just says, is this even a code of ethics matter? Maybe this is not actually a code of ethics matter. Maybe there's a problem, it's just not a code of ethics problem, and because of that they will maybe not hear the case, or the evidence presented isn't even close, in their opinion, of being worthy of an ethics hearing, and so it just won't go forward. So the respondent, the person who's being complained about, usually has no awareness that a complaint has been filed and that has been reviewed by the grievance committee. Only after the next step will the person who is being complained about find out, and that's if the grievance committee says, yes, there might be an issue here, we're gonna go ahead and recommend it to pro standards, and they'll have a hearing. In that case, a notice goes out to all the parties saying, we need to have a hearing, there's going to be a panel. The respondent, they get to see the complaint that was made, and then they have a chance to respond to that. The panel members will get that information prior to the hearing, and then they'll actually have a hearing. Generally, 3 other realtors and an alternate will be the ones hearing this complaint, and then they'll decide ultimately what should happen. That panel is allowed to issue fines, basically up to $15,000 for the instance, as well as if they think it's a legal or other more serious issue, they can escalate it and relay their findings to the Department of Real Estate. So these can be very serious. That whole process that I just said can take a long time. There's a lot of documentation from both sides kind of making their case, the other one making their defense, presenting that case, scheduling the hearing. Often these hearings get rescheduled, sometimes multiple times. There's just a whole process with it. Then they can have an appeal. Those appeals can get rescheduled, and so there can be just a lot of time. And during that, usually it's a big distraction for people that are going through it. Not to mention all the time and documentation you have to put together, because you don't really get another chance after this process. If your violation rises to a certain severity, actually your photo and a description of the incident and your name is published to the CAR, the California Association of Realtors website. And so It's not visible to the public, but to other realtor members, they can see, hey, you were found in violation of the code of ethics. It's pretty unpleasant. Nobody really wants that attention. And it's just the whole process is distracting along the way, and it's just counterproductive for your business. So if you have a chance to avoid it, you want to avoid it. There was a member of a public filing this complaint, as well as the agents, but sometimes they will actually skip, or in addition to their filing with the Board of Realtors, also file complaints with the Department of Real Estate, which is, I would argue, even more serious, because these are the people that control your ability as a licensee to even be in the business at all. Even when you think you're right, even when you are just so tempted to push back or fire off angry emails or communication or whatever else it might be that's actually digging yourself a deeper hole, I just would discourage it. Get off the high horse and take the high road, right? I think it's better for your business, helps you stay productive, and there's any number of things you might not think you did wrong, but everything comes out in these hearings, right? Maybe the hearing's about one thing, but the whole thing gets looked at and the file gets sent to the DRE because everyone is digging their heels in and not working together. And so now maybe it was originally looked at because of item 1, but actually you messed up on item 2 and they weren't complaining about that, but now that it's all in the light, that's now a separate issue for you. There's just ways you can be surprised unpleasantly, and we encourage you, again, de-escalate when you can, take the high road when you can, avoid this code of ethics and professional standards enforcement process as much as possible. It's generally not worth it. That being said, there's the occasions where we don't want bad actors in the industry, and this process is there for a reason, and there have been times we have gone through that process knowing that it's a pain, but we felt like it was the right thing to do for the industry. Nonetheless, that's the vast minority of the cases. The majority of the time, it just makes sense to work things out and not go through the process. Hope that helps, gives you a little bit of context, and hopefully this will be the most irrelevant video you'll get to watch in this series, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. If you learned something or if this helped you solve a problem, follow me for more.